fellas. I just want to address something that's kind of like been kind of like getting at me a little bit, bugging me. Some comments that some Mexican Americans or Mexicans say, not all of them. There's a lot of them that are truthful, and there's a lot of them that are not. So I want to call out the ones that are not truthful, the ones that are saying that Xander Zayas didn't knock out George Garcia because he has no heart. First of all, to that person, I just want to tell him that he's just butthurt because Puerto Ricans are ahead in the rivalry. It's 88 to 73. I'm going to start counting it from now on so I can keep the score of where we are between Puerto Rico versus Mexico in boxing. Nothing against the Mexicans. I got respect for the Mexicans, but the ones that don't call it for what it is, I'm going to call them out. Mexico is not on the same level as Puerto Rico because we got to compare it as far as the country size. Puerto Rico's a lot smaller than Mexico and fits in Mexico a whole times. And in spite of that, we happen to have the most champions per capita than any other country because based on our size, 3.5 million people. So when we look at the history of boxing between Mexico and Puerto Rico, there's a lot of great rivalries, but we are ahead as far as the victories. We have 88 victories, Puerto Rico, against Mexicans, 73. So when we look at the fight that a lot of people talk about, that a lot of Mexicans talk about and point out, is the fight between Salvador Sanchez versus Wilfredo Gomez. And I want to talk about that fight. That fight, I think it took place in the late 70s. And I wasn't watching boxing at that time, but I saw that fight and I feel like it was unfair because Salvador Sanchez had a weight advantage because when they fought each other, Wilfredo Gomez had a record of 32-0 with 32 KOs. He was coming up from the 122 weight division to 126 to face Salvador Sanchez. So there's a 4-weight division advantage, 4-pound weight advantage that Salvador Sanchez had. And I'm not looking for excuses, but weights, they have weight divisions for a reason. And I feel like Salvador Sanchez had the advantage because he was the natural 126 pounder when Wilfredo Gomez went up to his weight class to fight him. And before he faced Salvador Sanchez, Wilfredo Gomez was knocking out all the Mexicans. And his record was 32-0, 1 draw, and 32 KOs. That's very impressive. So you Mexicans are great fighters, and so are Puerto Ricans, but when you look at the history, it's because the Mexican fighter had an advantage. You look at Margarito, when he fought Miguel Cotto, he had an advantage too. He had an advantage because he used a plaster in his gloves, and then Cotto got the rematch and schooled him, and he was never seriously hurt in the rematch because he didn't have Margarito didn't have plasters in his hands. So let's call it for what it is. Puerto Rico versus Mexico. When it comes to Puerto Ricans and Mexicans, Boricuas have more athleticism than Mexicans. And to anybody that said that, on the previous comments, they said that they have more athleticism than me, you got to see me in person. That's when you really know if you have it. And we'll really know. So anyway, La Isla del Encanto, JC, #1 fan. Thanks for tuning in, my brother. Gracias por estar en sintonía en mi canal. Te aprecio mucho, mi hermanito. Abrazo. All right. So I see it and I call it for what it is. And I'm just calling it like as far as historically. We look at Chavez versus Camacho. Yes, it wasn't the best version of Camacho, but Camacho was already in the streets doing a lot of stuff that he wasn't supposed to do. I don't want to assassinate his character because I know his son and I respect his son, Hector Camacho Machito Jr. So if he would have not did the things that he was doing in the streets, he would have been way more in better shape and in better condition, and he would have accomplished a lot more in spite of him accomplishing a lot. But I feel like that's the reason why Chavez was a great fighter. Julio Cesar Chavez, he was a great fighter, and I feel he struggled with boxers too. But if Camacho was at his best and wasn't doing what he did, like the drugs and stuff that he did, he would have definitely been at his best and he would have dominated Chavez. But when he fought Chavez, he was already ruined You know, like he ruined his health, and he wasn't the same Camacho as the younger Camacho. It wasn't you know, indulging in drugs like that. So, but Camacho's a great champion. Don't get it twisted. But I think Chavez struggled with boxers. A lot of times, he struggled with Meldrick Taylor. But with the Meldrick Taylor fight, Meldrick Taylor was winning most of the rounds. It was like 15 rounds back in those days when Julio Cesar Chavez fought Meldrick Taylor. Meldrick Taylor was winning the whole fight. But the problem with that fight was that in spite of Meldrick Taylor winning, he was taking a lot of punishment from Chavez throughout the fight. And then towards the end, he was a little weak, but he was still winning the fight. And the last few seconds of the fight, Richard Steele stopped it in controversial fashion when there was only like a few seconds left for the fight, and he could have let the fight complete to the 15 rounds, and Meldrick Taylor would have won the fight because he was winning most of the rounds. But he stopped the fight too soon. When there was only a few seconds, he should have let the fight continue, and Meldrick Taylor would have won. But the difference with Camacho and Meldrick Taylor, I believe that Camacho, if he would have been at his best, he would have not got really touched by Chavez too much. He would have been the best version of himself. But we saw what Frankie Randall did to and Pernell Whitaker did to Chavez. So Chavez he's a great fighter. He's the best Mexican fighter of all time, I think. I think that he struggled with boxers. He struggled with Meldrick Taylor, but he did some damage to Meldrick Taylor. But he couldn't do that to Pernell Whitaker and Frankie Randall because they mastered that style better, the boxing style, hit and not get hit, and they were not taking that much punishment like the way Meldrick Taylor did, in spite of him winning the fight. If they would have not stopped it so prematurely, it was the steal, the controversial stoppage of that time that people still remember to this day. But I feel Mexican fighters in general, not saying all, but most of them have trouble with athleticism. And if you look at the history of Puerto Rican boxing, Wilfredo Benitez, skillful, powerful puncher and a boxer at the same time. He was an all-around great fighter. He had so much ability. He was able to move, hit, jab, knock you out, set you up, move, and he had good defense. And he gave the Mexicans help. He gave all the Mexicans help. The Mexicans usually, when you think of a Mexican, you think of just a brawler, but De La Hoya was a more Americanized Mexican-American, so his style was a brawler boxer. He was versatile. But if you compare between Puerto Rico and Mexico, most of the fighters in Puerto Rico are versatile. Cotto could punch, he can box. Felix Trinidad can punch, he can box too. Don't get it twisted. He was a good boxer. He was able to beat Whitaker, Pernell Whitaker. He was the only fighter who officially beat Mayweather. All the other losses that not Mayweather. What am I talking about? He officially beat Pernell Whitaker. I corrected myself. I got a little excited. Pernell Whitaker, Felix Tito Trinidad, he had boxing ability, but he wasn't like a Mayweather or Pernell Whitaker. But he had boxing ability. He had defense, and he had power, and he had a long jab. And he's the only fighter to officially beat Pernell Whitaker, because before that, De La Hoya got a controversial victory over Pernell Whitaker, and the fight with Ramirez early in his career, it was a controversial loss, and he turned it around and got his rematch. He never got the rematch with De La Hoya, but Pernell Whitaker was officially beaten by Felix Tito Trinidad. That's official. And that's the only guy that really officially beat him. And rest in peace to Pernell Whitaker. So I feel like, okay, if you compare the boxers from Mexico, yeah, you did. But don't worry about it. I told you I'm doing my live. So anyway, that was my beautiful wife, who I love so much.
Forgot.
Yeah, but I told you. I told you about that. You're gonna get famous. Don't worry about it. Yeah, DJ HDZ. Less athleticism, but they sit on punches, so they have more power. The Mexicans do have that chin, the relentlessness, but most of them don't have one punch KO. They do have a cumulative effect, like Chavez, Luis Castillo, who I think beat Mayweather. they have the accumulative effect. They don't have that one punch power, but they have like they're very relentless, and they usually have a strong chin. I would say Mexicans, I say 99.9% of them have a chin, and I say most of them, if they have some kind of power, it's not one punch KO, but and I say Puerto Ricans, 70% of them have a chin, and I say 30% of them don't have a chin. But when you have a Puerto Rican fighter that's athletic and has a chin and has power, he's poison for a Mexican fighter, because most Mexican fighters are straightforward, throw a lot of combination, have a lot of stamina, and they have a chin. Most of them. So, but they don't have. Most of them don't have the boxing ability with the legs. They're not as athletic as a Puerto Rican, because most. If you look at the history of the fighters from Puerto Rico and Mexico, Puerto Ricans are always versatile. For the most part, okay, if you get let's say a Puerto Rican boxer that has no chin but has power and has boxing ability, he still could be poisoned for a Mexican fighter. But if he gets caught by that punch by the Mexican, he can get knocked out because of the chin factor. But it's usually not the majority of the time that happens. Most of the time when a Puerto Rican fights a Mexican, Puerto Ricans is like 70%. They have a chin and they have boxing ability and power. So let's say, so they have an advantage over the Mexicans. They're a nightmare when it comes to like the styles. But when, let's say there's a Puerto Rican fighter that doesn't have boxing ability and he just has power but no chin, and he goes at it with a Mexican, it's like it's a battle of attrition there. Like it would be a slugfest, and if the Puerto Rican guy gets lucky to knock him down and not get hit, he would knock out the Mexican. But most of the times the Mexican will knock him out because he doesn't have the chin. He doesn't have the chin factor. So those things, there's different variables, but when it comes to like the overall style of both countries, the Puerto Ricans have more intangibles with the boxing ability, the chin. The chin, I give the Mexicans a 99.9% chin, and they're relentless. They don't give up. And Puerto Ricans is 70% chin, boxing ability, power, and they can take a punch, and they're relentless. But 30% are not. So that's where it can be a factor. You know, like it just depends on what strength they have. You know, what intangibles they have over the other. But it's always interesting to see Mexico versus Puerto Rico, because you know you're gonna get a great fight, and it's the biggest rivalry, and you know, in boxing. And I feel that Puerto Rican boxing it's right now the frequencies are turning towards our favor, and the tide is turning towards Puerto Ricans being in the limelight and being respected more. We got Subriel Matias, we got Xander Zayas, we got Oscar Collazo, we got Rene Santiago. But Rene Santiago's from a smaller weight class, and I don't know too much about him, and it's not a really competitive weight class. And I think there's one more fighter that we do have. Now, I don't know the person's name. I think it's either 5 or 6 champions that Puerto Rico has at the moment. And I do like Emiliano Vargas. He looks like he's the goods. And I'm not hating on Mexicans, you know. I'm just calling it for what it is. Like the Mexicans that say that Xander Zayas don't have no heart, man, they just butthurt because Xander Zayas proved that he has heart. You know, by the way he dominated Jose Garcia, he really made him look like he was nothing. He may not have knocked him out, but he did perform really great. It was a superb performance because he won every round. I don't see a round that Jose Garcia even won. And I feel like he made Jose Garcia look like a dead man walking. Like, Jose Garcia was knocking undefeated fighters out to get to where the position that he got. So I feel like he wasn't a slouch. And I feel like the Mexicans that say that Xander Zayas don't have no heart because he didn't knock him out, that's bull. They just hurt because the Puerto Ricans, again, win over the Mexican. And it shows the difference in boxing pedigree as far as boxing ability, speed. Xander Zayas don't have one punch KO, but he could hurt you. And he hurt Jose Garcia a few times, but he didn't capitalize on it. Not because he don't have heart, it's because he's a smart fighter, and he's learning, and he's gonna only get better with time, especially now that he's champion. He saw the long reach that Jose Garcia had, and even though he had him hurt many times, and he could have stopped him, but he chose not to fight that way because he felt like he was winning easy by throwing combinations, not running away, boxing. He wasn't running. It wasn't no Tom and Jerry fight. He was boxing, and he was outclassing and outlanding and dominating Jose Garcia. And I feel like maybe in the future, from this fight, he'll learn how to finish a fighter. And you know, not all fighters are like Tito Trinidad, who had that killer instinct that will finish you. He smells blood as soon as you're hurt. But you know, we will see in the future if he learned from that as far as finishing a fighter that's hurt. Jenny Thong, welcome back. Thanks for tuning into my channel. Clarissa Shields' tonight's performance was crap. I didn't get to see that fight. I'm not into women's boxing after what I saw with Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. I was so disappointed with that, so I'm kind of upset. So I'm kind of throwing in the towel with women's boxing for now. I might get back into it, but for now I'm just upset with how the politics goes behind the scene. I just don't like the way it was done. Clarissa Shields' tonight's performance was crap. I read about it, and I also saw she was a little out of shape. Can you correct me if I'm wrong? That's what I saw in the videos. Did you watch to do the fight? Yeah, I still reckon he quit. Daniel Dubois, what you think to this? Oh yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question. I actually saw the first fight and the second fight. I feel like in the first fight, Dubois, he won that fight. He knocked him out he hit him with a legal punch. I think a right hand to the body. It was on the belt line of Usyk and on the stomach, so it wasn't a low blow. It was a legal punch, but for some reason they didn't count it as a legal punch. They counted it as an illegal punch, and I feel like Dubois was robbed of a knockout victory because Usyk was on the floor recovering. The referee gave him almost 4 minutes to recover, and I feel like Usyk really lost by knockout. But since the referee called the Dubois combination an illegal blow to the body, then he was able to continue. And then eventually he got knocked out, I think in the 9th or 7th round, and in the rematch he got knocked out in the 5th round. So I feel like no, I think Usyk he basically used the angles, and he didn't fight as much as he did in the first fight with Dubois because he knows that he had that power, and he knew deep down inside in his mind that he really got knocked out. But the referee was gonna favor Usyk because he's the named fighter. Politics, you know how it is. He was probably bought out, the referee. So I don't think he tired out. I just think that it's possible that he tired out because he was missing more, and Usyk was landing in the second fight against Usyk, but not as much as the first fight. And I feel like it was more of a boxing clinic that Usyk was using against him with his feet, and he was making him get tired. I think that's what led to it. So Jenny Thong says Daniel Dubois quit last fight. Oh my God. And then she says, did you watch? Okay, yeah, I already answered that question. That's your opinion, and I respect that. But I'm not going to take away credit from Usyk's victory. I believe that if he was tired, it's because Usyk made him tired. And, you know, I'm not going to look for excuses. I just believe that Usyk was the better man that night. But in the first fight, I believe Daniel Dubois was robbed of a knockout victory because he did give him a legal punch in that first fight. And I believe that there was some politics behind it with the referee. Probably got paid off. And that's why he called it illegal. And he gave Usyk almost 4 minutes to recover. So I believe that Dubois was robbed of a knockout victory. All right, Katie Taylor is a machine, mate. I don't want to talk about women's boxing. I think there was politics in there because anyway, I don't want to talk about it. What are your thoughts on the fights in Japan this weekend, particularly Higa versus Vargas and Ricardo Sandoval fight? I got to look at the card. I got to look at the whole card. I'm glad you brought that up because now I look forward to watching the fights in Japan this weekend. I don't know too much about it. It's overseas, but when does Inoue fight? that's the fight I want to see Unui fight. I'm a fan of his, but I want to see more. I saw how he fought against Stephen Fulton. He was very impressive, and I'm really impressed with him. I think he's a 3-weight division champion in the 122 pounds. Right now he's in 122 pounds. But thanks DJ HDZ for bringing that up. Number 2 fan, I appreciate you. Subscribe to that channel. Tony also knows boxing. Subscribe to my channel. I just wanted to get some things off my chest. But I'm glad you told me about that DJ HDZ, about the fights in Japan this weekend. Who else is on the card besides Higa versus Vargas? I want to know, is that Vargas' son? Vargas, I know Emiliano, the other guy, the other guy, I forgot his name, but I know he has like 3 sons that are boxing. Let me know in the comments who's fighting on the undercard as well, and if it's Fernando Vargas' sons that are boxing in the undercard as well, or in the main event. Let me know, because I'll be watching that. I'm gonna look forward to it, because I want to see how they do. Now, Antonio Vargas. Antonio Vargas. Okay, what's his record? I gotta check him out. I'm gonna check it out this Saturday, and I'll give you my feedback after I see the fights. I'll be watching it this Saturday, and thanks for letting me know about that fight. Subscribe to the channel. Tony also knows boxing. Puerto Rican boxing's in effect. We're not going nowhere. We're just gonna get better. Universal Promotions is promoting the best talent in Puerto Rico. Check out Abisael Cotto, September 12th. He's gonna fight on pay-per-view in Puerto Rico in his homeland, and I'm gonna interview him, God willing. I'm trying to get another interview. It didn't work out. I had some technical difficulties on YouTube, but he said he's willing to give me another interview. He's a humble brother, and he's very talented. He's 8-0 with 7 KOs. Abisael Cotto, check him out. Peace. One love, my brothers. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to that channel. Tony also knows boxing. Don't be afraid to subscribe. If you want the truth and the unadulterated facts, subscribe to my channel. Peace. Tony.